Art Briles is back in college football. Will Bears fans try to push him back to Baylor?
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. I'm your host, Cam Stuart. Joining me, the great Pete Sousa of ESPN.
Good afternoon, everybody! Or good morning. What's up, every day?
All right, I actually have Mad Dog Russo with me. True story, Mikey?
Oh, really?
We're going to go through the Giants schedule, followed by the Jets. Oh,
Dave,
country dog.
Aranda, the Baylor guy, he's going to keep the job. All right,
dude, great Mad Dog freak out a few weeks ago of Joe Davis doing the Dodgers parade.
Oh, dude.
I'd be apoplectic if I was a Blue Jays fan.
It's not that big a deal, by the way.
It's not. Like, I'm one who does get uncomfortable by something like that. That's not one of the big deals.
No,
it's also not what we're talking about today.
He works for the Dodgers.
It's also not what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
We're talking about Art Briles being back in college football, how much of a gamble Baylor is taking with Dave Aranda here through the eyes of Pete Sousa, and then we'll, of course, recap from the Players Era tournament, Baylor and Creighton. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. Pete, it's good to have you back. I'm glad you're back on the program. For those people were wondering about Friday, Pete was busy. Pete was out in Birmingham covering what ends up being one of the biggest storyline games of the weekend, the UAB game. So
I could Locked On Baylor because we were at walkthrough at UAB, and apparently I didn't notice anything, but something that happened at that walkthrough spilled over into Saturday morning, which led to that horrific situation.
Crazy story, man.
Man, I will tell you, I'll take 2 minutes or 1 minute. I got to the game, and I was told by somebody outside our TV truck, hey, did you hear about the stabbing? I went up to the booth. I Googled it. It was real. It was on, Alabama.com or whatever their local website is, legitimate operation. I went down to the field. I saw football staff guys hanging around, like support staff. I asked them. They gave me more on the story. We connected with ESPN. It came to fruition that 6 guys on the defensive line were going to be out, so we addressed it in the open instead of just addressing it. But it was sad. It was scary. It was strange. So let's talk about Baylor. I'll say Alex Mortensen, Chris Mortensen's son, was amazing. He's so cool, and I hope that guy can weather the storm. He seemed awesome.
Well, we're not going to stray too far away from the bizarre in college football. So Art Briles is back in college football. Eastern New Mexico, Division II, Eastern New Mexico. They're playing such great teams as West Texas A&M and UTPB, who is advancing in the D2 playoffs. Huh?
Permian Basin.
Yeah, the Falcons, UTPB, baby. Cannon Gibson throwing for 5 touchdowns last week. So Art Briles will be coaching against him at Eastern New Mexico next year. That makes shockwaves throughout college football. Obviously, he's been close in the past, right? He almost was the offensive coordinator, or was for a day, at Grambling for Hugh Jackson. Too much backlash. He was going to be the offensive coordinator for the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the CFL. Too much backlash. He does Italy. He does high school. And after a good year for Art Briles Stadium in Stephenville, the Texas High School Hall of Fame thing, things kind of were good this year for the Art Briles reputation. No matter how you felt about him beforehand, it's been positive this year. And now he takes on Eastern New Mexico job. Pete, your reaction to Art Briles being back in college football?
Well, I remember when I got sober, there was a woman who I dated who I knew I was never going to hear from again because it was napalmed our relationship. Okay, can you hear me? Sorry, I just got a phone call.
Yeah.
I got you. Sorry. So 10 years in, I heard from her. And, maybe it's the 10-year mark, whatever, but things I have noticed that things have softened on both sides, on the Baylor side, right? Mm-hmm. On the Briles side. And I think that Baylor is not unhappy with him having this job. I think they don't care, right? I think they're probably like, hey, that's good. This doesn't surprise me. It's kind of like, hey, it's about time. I am up to my eyeballs in football teams I have done play-by-play for this season and last season at ESPN, who I have evoked the name Art Briles. Speaking of the offense I'm watching in front of me. Oh, by the way, Art Briles is not dead, right? So why can't Art Briles coach the Art Briles offense somewhere and bring it to success? Look, man, here's the thing I think is very realistic about this situation. The team he's taking over is like 2-8 or something like that, right? Yep. So it's not beyond him at all to turn it around. I mean, on a Division II level, right? Literally with his system and his coaching ability, he can really, really evoke change right away. And I think that in 1 year, he can put together a reputation or should I say a resume that reminds people how good he is, and he can get a D1 job, probably group of 5. I'm not thinking at all that like there's no Baylor connection here. There's no, this is not Rich Rod coming back to West Virginia. I even talked to somebody who said that Jimbo Fisher will be going back to Florida State. Well, obviously that's not happening now. So even though that's in vogue, Scott Frost at UCF, I would not hold my breath if I'm a Baylor fan that Art Briles is coming back to Baylor.
Okay, that's Pete Sousa being realistic, being the knowledgeable college football expert.
I think this calendar year, 53 weeks, 54 weeks, I think he'll be a D1 head coach. I do.
Well, see, this is kind of where my next question goes, because I agree with you. I don't think he's going to be the Baylor coach ever again, which is crazy that we're even kind of doing this. But to your point, like, he could be successful. He could be a Division I coach at this time next year. And it is in vogue right now for, let's bring back the glory days. And maybe is there not a more desperate fan base for the glory days that aren't that far gone than the Baylor Bears? This has been up and down, mostly down in this decade, even though you have, one of the great seasons in Baylor history also in this decade. They've announced they're sticking with Dave Aranda. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. But fans are desperate here. They're desperate for winning football again. Time's healing all wounds. They'll point to, the letter that Baylor sent to Art saying that there was basically no wrongdoing. And there's a lot of fans who never gave up on that. They're still in my comment section all the time. So whether it happens or not, Pete, do you think that becomes a bit of a toxic atmosphere around Baylor with Dave Aranda still possibly here next year and people clamoring for Art Briles to come back and restore order?
No, and that's a great question, but no, because he's not coaching at, Texas State. He's not. It's a Division II school. I think that makes it totally different, and I think it removes any possibility that could feed into a toxic culture next year. I will say one that I'll drop a little rumor, something that I heard that is not negative or positive or whatever, but I have heard that when there was a promo video that everybody's seen by now that's listened to this because you're hardcore Baylor or watch, where they showed Art, right, in stadium before a game, and the crowd really reacted.
Gets a pop, yeah.
Apparently, I had heard that Mack Rhoades was not happy about that. And I can tell you the person who okayed it is still working at Baylor, and Mack Rhoades is not. So, hey, maybe that's a little bit of sentiment to maybe there's people. I do think that the administration that is still there at Baylor is smart and thoughtful, and they understand the fans, and they want the fans to be on board to the point that they will go to lengths to make stuff like that happen, right? The art thing, which Mack was dead set against.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying at all, and I don't want to feed into this, but that isn't a good point to share, having a conversation like this. I think the people in Baylor athletics right now are thoughtful, they're smart, they have vision. I think that, and we can talk about this next segment, how they got put into such a jackpot here. And literally, if you're listening, I'm doing handcuffs. Like, that athletic department was put in handcuffs over the course of the past month, and they're doing the best they can. I truly believe that.
This is good. This is a differing opinion on Locked On Baylor, so I can't wait to get to that. Art Briles, man, Eastern New Mexico. I'm fascinated to see it. Like, again, I'm not one of those people that's CAB back to Baylor. I'm not, and I'm probably never going to be, I don't think.
Yeah.
But I am fascinated to see how this works. You know, he might have a couple of years left in him. He's going to turn 70 in a couple of weeks here. And that's more or less his old stomping grounds. He never coached outside of Texas before he went to Italy, but Eastern New Mexico is an extension of West Texas, man. He still knows the place. He still knows high school football out there. He's going to
kick it, and he looks good. I think like he'll get a haircut and shave, so he'll present younger to connect more with the kids. And I think he's going to kick ass. And I think he will have a D1 job because let's face it, like, look, man, we're in an era where guys are just coaching later. Kurt Signetti is 64, I think. So it's just not outside of the box to have an older guy coaching at.
It's also in vogue. It's also in vogue with them and with Houston and Willie Fritz.
Yeah.
So it's not impossible to see him at a D1 school next year.
We'll see it this week. He reminds me of Super Dave Osborne when he talks. When we talk to him, I had Houston in week 1.
Sounds like Doc Rivers, man.
Yeah, well, he's got that voice. It's like, and we'll tell you, Willie has a megaphone at practice. That he's
good for him. So he's taking it easy, but still. Anyway.
Yeah, he's no dummy. He's the man.
I want to hear what Pete Sousa is saying about this athletic department, why they made the right move to keep Dave Aranda on board, or maybe just the only move they could make. Let's talk about it next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode of Locked On Baylor is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You know them. You love them. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to the fourth quarter comebacks. Unfortunately, you can't bet on the Doc Rivers teams anymore. At least I don't think. He's not coaching. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps I just wouldn't bet on them. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Bet on the 29 other teams. Right now, FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on Locked On Baylor, Pete Sousa of Inside the 12, ESPN, the Pete Sousa Show on Rogue Media Network, knowing this conference inside and out and talking with national college football people all the time on the Pete Sousa Show. I realized that in the days since Dr. Linda Livingstone announced that Dave Aranda would be back for 2026, I've done a lot of ranting, but it's only been me ranting. That's it. And I need some thoughts here. Pete has always been the one to tell me that I'm not wrong about Dave Aranda, but a little overboard. And I appreciate him checking me at the door with that. There's also some other meme of former Detroit Lions coach that gets thrown around in our text messages a lot.
Wayne Fonts, because I believe that Dave is like Wayne Fonts. When it gets down the stretch, hey, they're going to fire him, and he always lives. They just
find a way. They just find a way. And so now they have found a way in a very bizarre way. This looked absolutely like Dave Aranda's funeral march to the end of the season. And kind of somehow, some way, Mack Rhoades, it all goes up in flames a few weeks before Dave Aranda is supposed to be fired. I don't think Baylor needed to go out and say they were going to retain their head coach, but they did. Pete Sousa, you think they had to do that? Well,
I think it was the prudent move, and I think it doesn't necessarily make it the popular one.
Does it, real quick?
Yeah.
It's never going to be the popular one at this point. Is prudent move different even from right move? You know what I mean?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's a really fine line. Safe. It's really thin, but
safe. I mean, again, and also it's weird, but by making the decision, you sort of buy yourself a little time internally. Because it's tough if you make the hasty decision of hiring a guy before you hire your AD. Maybe your AD doesn't want to come because of their guy. I'll tell you what. Can I talk about my?
Go off, King.
So last week on the Pete Sousa Show, it sounds stupid saying that, but I've been told I need to promote. I had Shahan Jayaraja on, CBS college football sports writer, who's awesome. Now, Shahan overall kind of got the situation right when I asked him about Baylor. he's very good at his job. And he mentioned to me, I think it's going to take so long for Baylor and Mack Rhoades to separate that it's going to hinder the coaching search, so they'll stick with Dave. Well, later that Thursday, we knew that wasn't totally correct because they separated.
Mm-hmm.
And
because I was in the same boat as Shahan with that. Like, you just put yourself in a time frame, which I understand why they did that. But you put yourself in a bad time frame in terms of what are related to getting coaches, and you just might be too far behind. So and then that changed, and then it all changed.
Did you have me on so you can talk, or did you want me to talk?
Yes, I did have it. It's just really to have someone else on the side.
So I believed that when they separated Thursday, I was part of popular opinion or popular fan opinion, whatever, like, oh, okay, like this means that a swift change is coming at athletic director and then head coach, right? They're going to appoint somebody. That was, I guess, fool's gold, right? That separation, thinking that was going to incite some kind of change immediately, because truth be told, and I talked with people at major athletic directors, athletic departments over the weekend, like not Baylor, but the bureaucracy of getting something of this magnitude done, hiring a new athletic director, it ain't even like if Linda's got somebody, it's not a pocket listing, right? Like, oh, like I know somebody, they're ready to go. It's just not that easy when you're involving a major institution of higher learning. And oh, by the way, bad news for you, Baylor fans, your school kicks ass. Like, it's a great college. So it's not like you can just roll somebody through the back door, maybe like you could at different schools in the Big 12, in the state, wink, wink. So you've got to play by a certain set of rules. And we always want somebody to blame. And I understand that, because that's how we are. We want to seek retribution. We want to say that over there is the reason why. And you really can't even do that in this situation, because the main person that's culpable, and the wording I used earlier today on my show, is really suffering from the human condition, and I'm going to give them a pass. Mack Rhoades personally got sideways. I don't know what's going on. I don't know exactly what's happening, but I really, really, really like the guy, and I believe he's going to have a second act somewhere. But there is clearly something going on there that led to a bunch of behavior that was strange, to say the least, right? And out of character for him. But he gets sideways, and so this whole situation implodes. And that is the reason why we are sitting here closing in on Thanksgiving, and Baylor has recommitted to Dave Aranda. There really is no other option right now that is conducive to running a school of Baylor's ilk. Like, and Linda Livingstone is doing the best she can with the cards she was dealt. Maybe there is a part of her that isn't like, a gambler, that maybe she could have taken a huge swing, and maybe she would have had to do all kinds of crazy stuff to make something happen swiftly. Maybe she had that set up and it dissolved. And then she said, you know what? We're going with what we have right now in-house. And that will allow us, when we do hire an AD, to make their own decision a year from now, unless Dave is doing, immaculate work, right? Unless we're replaying 2021. So I don't think that Dr. Livingstone had any other option. And I give her props that she actually made a decision. Like, Kim, you're engaged, but like,
I am. Yep.
I'm engaged. I dated. Like, as I began to matriculate as a young man, I knew that, like, when I was with a woman who I was courting and we were out on a date, I had to make that decision. Whether it was right or wrong, it's not attractive to your followers or people who you are with to be like, geez, shucks, I don't know. Let me kick the can down the road. Like, all you're doing is digging yourself. I don't know. Did you want to go see Top Gun Maverick, or did you want to go see Parent Trap 2? Like, even that doesn't even make sense, but you get my point. Like, you got to make a decision. Yeah. And she made a decision, a tough one. Maybe it wasn't popular, but she had to make a decision, and she did it. Good on her for making it and for standing behind it and taking some crap. But I don't know that there was another avenue to go down. And I know, look, man, two things can be true at once. It was a prudent decision, and it sucks if you're a Baylor fan. Like, because you don't who wants to eat more meatloaf at this point? You guys have been served meatloaf for 5 years.
Yeah.
You eat loaf again? No, I'm sorry, 6 years.
Yeah. One year it had it was a little bit more tender, and you're like, damn, maybe this is good. And then it was like, nah, it's still meatloaf. One last question about it, though, is
what I said to you.
Huh?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I don't 100% agree because.
Tell me why you don't agree.
Maybe because I'm too close to it. But I think first off, I don't think they needed to stand there and say it 2 weeks before the end of the season, because now that I don't think that's a negative for the whole fan base. I think that just gets everyone off the boat. And the second thing is, I think you can get an AD in here before Christmas. I think you can get one in here in 2 or 3 weeks. And obviously, that's not, if it's 3 weeks, that's not a good time to just then hire a coach. But you can hire a guy in January. It's not the way you want to do it, and it doesn't fit the timeline of everybody else.
Every coach that what coaches love? Coaches that were hired on December 5th will say, well, that first year was a wash because we were already behind schedule when we got hired. That's crazy, but it's true.
So then they're going to be 2 years behind schedule.
Maybe you're right. I don't know. Yeah.
If you know what I mean? Because then we all know
it's sides of it, and I'm here to listen.
Yeah.
I'm saying,
this is a bad example, but the last coach you hired was in January, and at the time it wasn't a bad move. It obviously turned out that Dave was not the guy to keep this program going and bring it to more than one height, right? But coaches do get hired away to the NFL, and you can get a coordinator or a guy who will use this as a stepping stone. And a very unpopular Baylor opinion of mine is I don't really care if a coach uses this as a stepping stone. Yeah. If you get 3 or 4 damn good years out of them, I don't care, man. Then that brings your job up. You raise your profile up to go and get a destination head coach. So I think there wasn't a positive that came out of it. Maybe internally of hey, this is what we're doing within the athletic department, but there's 2 games left. Your team needs to win one of them, and your fan base is more off board than ever, I would say. So we need to do another discussion on this at some point.
We could. Let me ask you
so many angles. Yeah.
Before you kick me out, Dave's going to but he's going to have some selling point. Something will have changed. He's going to say something, whether it's, in years past, letting coordinators go or we pay players. What's he going to do to excite the fan base this year, you think?
Next recruiting class. 2026, class of 26, man, top 30 class, which Baylor's done before, which Dave Aranda has done before, but that's what it's going to be. And there's already momentum on the 27 class. They are doing a good job. I say they, because it's not just Dave, it's Aaron Hunt, it's Keenan Hall, it's Dallas Baker. The staff has done a good job putting together recruiting classes that just haven't been able to make their mark yet. So that's what it will be. That's what it'll be.
All right.
They're not ducking Texas Tech and BYU next year, though. They're not doing that. They're both on the schedule. You got Auburn as a road game, so it's gonna get tougher and
what
probably get worse.
Great toll is this, dude? By the way, I was on the road in Birmingham. I watched both you and Drake open your shows in front of Christy, my fiance. She freaking loved it. She loved you and what you said. You were already hoarse by the time you started, so it made it look like you were yelling all day about this thing. Which, that's not why you were hoarse. And then Drake, you guys were great.
Yeah. She's a fan of a team that might not hate to see Baylor's downfall, to be fair. Wouldn't call them big rivals or anything. Won some more money off her team again this weekend with FanDuel. Anyway, we got to talk about basketball. Thank you to Pete Sousa. Baylor, Creighton recap coming up next on Locked On Baylor.
Scott Drew.
And how about Scott Drew's Baylor Bears? 4-0 signature victory so far. They beat Creighton yesterday in Vegas, and this game turned into a track meet really the last 15 minutes of the game. And I know that Creighton isn't quite what they have been the last couple of years. Kalkbrenner isn't there. They had a nice portal class. They're trying to integrate some guys into the lineup, but that is a program that they've got in Omaha. Like I said this last year, they beat Kansas the same night that Baylor lost to UConn in December of last year. I was actually in Kansas when it happened. And I was like, man, like Creighton just does this, man. Creighton just is always there. They're always around. They're always in the Sweet 16. They're in the Elite Eight a lot of years. Well, a couple of years. Like Greg McDermott, man, they those dudes just win. They have a culture there. I'm like jealous of Creighton in a lot of ways. And Baylor just took it to them. Baylor led the whole game. They didn't trail for a single second of that game. And even when Creighton kind of threw their best punch at him at the end, it was Baylor. It was Baylor. And there's two guys that I've got to talk about in this segment about what we saw yesterday against Creighton. The first one is Dan Skillings. Okay, and I know that's not the first name you expected, but I am getting more and more comfortable with the idea that I might have been wrong about Dan Skillings. And we'll see it when it comes to Big 12 play, but that kid played like a tough MF yesterday, man. He really did. Didn't quite get the double-double, but he had 14 and 8. He had some tough, gritty baskets. He's making good plays in transition, man. He had a really nice pass with his offhand to Cam Carr that led right to a layup. He is just a tough dude down there. Dan Skillings, and can shoot the three. That was a big part of Baylor's victory. It did go down to 39%, but at one point in the second half, it was 55% from three. It ended up evening itself out. They shot 39% from three. Creighton shot 38%. But the other dude is Cam Carr. I know that's not surprising you. Obviously, he was the leading scorer with 21. He had 9 rebounds. 21 and 9 is what I was thinking there. I mean, the athleticism of this kid on both ends of the floor, man. He could jump right through the gym. He's got the long arms. The wingspan's incredible. We're seeing it on the defensive end. And I'll take those dunks, man. I will take those. Just really brought the house down. And how about this? And this is not a knock on the next person I'm about to talk about, but how about this? 4 games into the season, you get a nice kind of signature victory. The next game will certainly be a test for this Baylor team, as we saw with them taking on St. John's last year. They'll have St. John's today at 4 o'clock. But how about your first signature victory of the season? And the third guy we're talking about is Tunde Yesufu. Maybe that's what Baylor was missing last year. You know, maybe that's what Baylor was missing the year before when they had a couple of stud freshmen out there. Like Dan Skillings and Cam Carr were the guys I was sitting here ready to talk about. And Caden Powell was the guy last time. And Tunde, had a couple of baskets at the end. He didn't have a great game shooting the ball, but he hit a big 3. He had a nice dunk at the end, but he did hit a big 3 when it was going back and forth. I think that took a 2-point lead to a 5-point lead. So he didn't play a bad game. He certainly played well on the defensive end. That's for sure. And that's something he's going to bring to you every night. But that's a good thing for Baylor when Tunde is the third guy you're talking about. That means you're going to win a lot of games if Tunde is the third guy you're talking about or I'm talking about. But really the difference in the game here, 22-8. On the offensive glass, Baylor was 22-8. And all Grant Hill talked about the first couple of minutes, the great Grant Hill was talking about how Baylor needed to pound the glass on the defensive end because Creighton is such a good offensive rebounding team. That's where they're going to get their offense from. And here's Baylor out offensive rebounding them by 14. So yeah, they did have they had a good game on the defensive glass as well, where they out rebounded them by 3, and that was important. But they took Creighton and beat them at their own game. 22 offensive rebounds, 27 second chance points. Creighton had 8 offensive rebounds to 7 second chance points. And Creighton's bench outscored them. A lot of benches are going to outscore Baylor this year. They don't have a deep bench. But when you're getting that many second chance opportunities, doesn't matter. Does not matter. That right there is going to win you a lot of games. Positive signs, man. I really liked what we saw yesterday. I liked what we saw against Washington. It was a very similar game against 2 solid teams. Now you're going to see a pretty good one today with Rick Pitino and St. John's. they're replacing a lot, so you kind of take it with a grain of salt in November. But that is supposed to be a damn good team. So that's going to be a nice test, especially for both of them, second day in a row. What I will say, though, to bring some negativity into this, not a lot of life in that place. I know it was the first game of the day. It's Vegas. You've got Baylor and Creighton playing in Vegas. It's not going to bring a huge crowd. But I just think, like, that's the one. Is this the one we pulled out of Maui for to play in this tournament? It's certainly one of the tournaments that is becoming bigger and bigger on the mainland and can throw a ton of sponsorship dollars at it and put a lot of butts in the seats, or at least have a lot of seats without butts in them. These are the tournaments that are ripping Atlantis and Maui away from us, which sucks, man. Maui Invitational rocks. It was like such a cool kind of, it was a unique thing in college basketball that you would get a couple of the best teams in the country. In fact, I remember one year watching Duke and Kansas, and they were going down to the wire. Duke and Kansas on a Tuesday night before Thanksgiving, and they're playing in a high school gym, with 1,000 people in the stands. It was awesome, though. Like, that's cool. And it's something that only really college basketball could do. And now they don't want to do it anymore. They just want to play it in these pro arenas. So whatever. Good win for the Baylor Bears. How about that, man? And they were really getting after it defensively, especially in that first half. I thought they looked really good and really agile defensively. Again, got to a bit of a track meet down the stretch. It was good shot making too, because Creighton only scored 2 more points in the second half than they did in the first. But Tunde, nice finish. Carr, Dan Skillings. Obi Agbim had a great start, by the way. I thought this was going to be an Obi Agbim game. And hey, you'll take 13 points, a couple of assists. You'd like a little bit more. But I thought he was very efficient on the day. Dan Skillings and Carr were excellent in this game. And they really came through for you down the stretch. So a lot to be excited about with this Baylor team. We'll certainly have some more reaction on tomorrow's show. Tomorrow's show is going to be a Wicker Wednesday. It's going to be the last one before the Thanksgiving holiday, if you can believe it. So let me know your thoughts on what Pete was saying in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about Scott Drew's team this year in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We will come at you tomorrow and just about every weekday that's not a holiday on YouTube, and then wherever you get your podcasts as well. I really appreciate you making it your first listen today and every day. We'll see you tomorrow on another episode of your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.